Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Transpicuous News. I'm back. I told you I'd be faster this time. It's October 2nd, Sunday, October 2nd. Yeah, it's been an interesting weekend. So much going on that I think a little review is in order. Because, yeah, there's one of those days when you look at stuff as the whole and you kind of pan back and look at it and go, oh, I don't believe in coincidence. There's just too much going on for everything to be same old, same old. So I'm going to take you into the screen share. We're going to run through this mess as fast as we can because this could literally be an epic 5-hour symposium if we were to really get into it all. So we're just going to go through the really brief review. So let me share my screen. My friends, what can I tell you? It's the new year for a good portion of the world. And there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff that's being discussed, a lot of points that little dots aren't being connected quite yet, and a lot of things that are not being discussed. So I want to take you on a little stroll. So I did Transpicuous News earlier on this week. We talked about the Senate vetoing Obama's veto, and of course we talked about the Peres funeral in Jerusalem and keeping a close eye on all of that. So this is a continuation thereof. We're going to touch on a lot of these different points this morning. First of all, I'm going to show you a little something. This was an article that came out last June 25th by Jeff Berwick, and I remember when this article came out. Interesting play of the numbers. Now, as I've always said, I'm not really into numerology. I don't believe that it is the be-all, end-all of how these things go. But I know that they love the numerology. So therefore, I keep track of it. Now, when this article came out, it was a little bit of one of those moments where you go, oh, well, isn't that interesting? Numerologically speaking. Magic number 7, Brexit. Remember, this is right after the Brexit vote. The Brexit collapse falls exactly on the Shemitah date. Now, of course, he doesn't mean the actual date of the Shemitah, but very interesting. 2014, Christine Lagarde gave a speech on the magic number 7. If you haven't seen that video, all you got to do is go do a YouTube search, Christine Lagarde, magic number 7. Interesting little video she put together. Okay? The magic number 7 is more than just years. It appears to correlate right down to months, weeks, days. So the last major market crash occurred on September 29th, 2008. On that day, the Dow Jones fell 777 points. On Friday, right after the Brexit vote, was when the Dow fucking collapsed, when the stock markets across the world went ballistic. Okay? In the aftermath of Brexit, the Dow fell 600 points. But what's interesting about that date that Dow took that dip was, it was exactly 7 years, 7 months, 7 weeks, and 7 days since the last big stock collapse in 2008. Oh, seriously? You can't make this shit up. You just can't. There's interesting stuff going on. Now, Friday was fun. Friday was one of the most epic spin doctoring days I've ever seen in the market magazines, your Bloomberg, your Market Watch, all of those. They were just, from 25 minutes before the bell rang on the New York Stock Exchange open, they were pumping out the articles about, of course, Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank, oh, you know, it's not going to be that bad. Even if Deutsche somehow collapses, it's not going to be another Lehman Brothers moment. Oh, no, of course not. The spin was so visible that you could literally feel them doing everything they could to try and calm the market. Oh, the day before the close and this weekend. Now we have Deutsche. Interesting stuff came out about Deutsche as well, though, because even for the fact that they are bankrupt, they're completely fucked. Now, Deutsche Bank is being charged by Italy for market manipulation and creating false accounts. So kind of like to add insult to injury, Bloomberg reported that 6 current and former managers of Deutsche Bank were charged in Milan for colluding to falsify the accounts of Italy's third biggest bank, Monte Paschi, now also completely fucking bankrupt, okay? Which is also so insolvent it's currently scrambling to finalize a private sector bailout. And manipulate the market. 2 former executives at Nomura Holdings and 5 at Banca del Monte de Paschi are also being charged. All coming back to Deutsche Bank. Oh, why? Because Deutsche Bank started this setup with the Italian banks back in 2002. And they've basically been playing the prop-up game where you just kind of move assets from one place to the other and try to add a little bit of shadows to your books to make it look like you're a little more solvent than you actually are. Well, it's coming home to roost now because there's only so much fudging of numbers you can do before everyone sees you're completely fucking destitute. But let's move on. The Deutsche thing, and I cannot overstate enough for people to understand the importance of Deutsche in the European Union. Basically, this is the bank that is propping up everything within the European Union. It's also completely connected to all the American banks, the big 5. It has got its fingers spread. This is, when Deutsche implodes, it will touch every financial market, every major banking industry across the planet. It's not even a question. Now, big news happened in the financial markets this weekend. Now, James Corbett of the Corbett Report, Corbett Report put an excellent series of articles. He's put them out over the last little while, but he put together a really good article this weekend. I highly recommend everyone read this, watch his video, and follow through in some of the finer points, because he's talking about the SDR world order. On Saturday, the IMF formally announced the adding of the Chinese renminbi, or the yuan, to the special drawing rights basket Saturday, October 1st. The move boosts the yuan to the status of global reserve currency. Now, this isn't a surprise. We all knew this was coming at the end of September. We knew this last September, 2015, that this was coming this September. Kind of been glossed over by a lot of people. No one's really talked that much about it. All of a sudden, hey, we're here. Guess what? The yuan is now part of the global reserve currency. The importance is understanding the role that the SDRs play and could play in the whole financial system and the whole concept of a new financial system. There's been articles coming out talking about global debt jubilee. This was, unfortunately, the guy's name's gone right out of my head. He's one of the big financial writers in the UK. Now, the guy's a pay shell. We know he is. So when he starts throwing around words like global debt jubilee, you need to pay attention, because there's a meaning in there that needs to be followed through on. It's notice that's being given to people. But what does it actually mean? Therein is the big question. This here, talking about the SDRs, is very, very important information to people to understand. This is the biggest change that we have seen in a long time. As the Epoch Times put it, this is the first step towards a one world currency. And guess what? It's been in the planning for years, openly discussed in central bankers' white papers, decision documents, and conferences, but conveniently unreported by the media and overlooked by the public. Want to recommend Ken at Redefining God has written a massive amount of series of articles talking about China and exactly this, and the whole global one world currency and how China interrelates into that. Of course, you've got all the people out there, deluded people, who are trying to do that. Oh, China's coming to save us. Yes, China's going to save the world. No, they're not, just like Putin's not. Okay, guys? They are in bed with the exact same people. They're all run by the exact same bankers. They all have the same controllers. Okay? This is a movement forward. Just watch, though. We're going to watch how this plays out. Now, interesting thing about this weekend, it was a very celebratory weekend all over the world, okay? We talked about, on my last report, Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which starts today. We talked about that. But that's not the only major holiday. It is also the Islamic New Year tomorrow. It is also, National Day Golden Week holiday in China. Today marks the 67th anniversary of National Week in China of the communist government regime in China. 67th anniversary. Today, oh, isn't it funny? Oh, and tomorrow's a holiday. Isn't it funny that the whole yuan being announced in the SDR basket would happen on this weekend, just ahead of the Golden Week in China? Again, I don't believe in coincidences. Not only that, we talked about Deutsche Bank. Oh, Germany's got a national holiday tomorrow. A lot of countries have national holidays and banking holidays tomorrow. Kind of a long weekend. It's going to be interesting how everything plays out. Oh, when the markets open again? When will that be? Let's go on. We're going to backtrack a little bit. Talk about Israel, okay? Israel has just sealed off the Gaza Strip. All the Palestinian territories have been completely sealed for the Jewish New Year over safety concerns. Basically, unless you're dying of a medical emergency, if you're in the Gaza Strip, you ain't getting out. It's basically been turned into a ginormous concentration camp, really. And ahead of the Jewish New Year, they've just approved a new settlement in Gaza, in Palestinian-held areas, for I think it's 67 or 69 new Israeli homes. Conveniently, all this is happening on this weekend. You know, when all the world leaders were in Jerusalem this weekend, in time for the Shemitah New Year. Conveniently. Let's go on, though. What else happened this weekend? The Jesuits are in convocation to elect a new superior general this weekend. Now, the Black Pope, and if you don't know what that means, you might want to go look it up. Just to underline the significance of this weekend, a convocation of this type has only happened 35 times since the 1500s. Just to kind of bring that into focus. This isn't something that happens every year or even every 10 years. Just to bring this into focus a little bit. Okay, so the Jesuits are electing a new superior general. Let's see, what else do we have going on? Oh, for my British friends, you might find, if you're not paying attention, you should be, because the new prime minister dictator, an elected official of the United Kingdom, made an announcement this weekend. Let's discuss this lovely announcement, shall we? Hold on, give me a second. Why are we not scrolling? Here we go. This is the announcement she put out September 1st. May, the Prime Minister, unelected, will hope to put some of the criticisms to rest by pledging to overturn the 1972 European Communities Act. The law allowed the accession of Britain into the European Economic Community, which of course later became the European Union. We will introduce this in the next Queen's speech, a great repeal bill that will remove the European Communities Act from the statute books, she told the newspapers. This would take place in April or May. This marks the first stage in the UK becoming a sovereign, independent country once again. It will return power and authority to the elected institutions of our country. It means that the authority of EU law in Britain will end. Right, okay, off the top, reading what she just said. But it gets better, okay? May, who was appointed after her predecessor, David Cameron, resigned following the referendum, and this is the important one because it's right at the very bottom of the article. I guess they figured everyone would be too bored to read that far, has ruled out an early parliamentary election, saying that it would cause instability within the country. So basically, all my British friends, you have an unelected official who is assigned to you by the Queen of England, who is now making major changes to British law and statutes, who is not going to put an early parliamentary election in place because of it would cause instability, i.e., welcome to your new ruler, folks. Aren't you happy? Aren't you glad you had a say in who it is who's going to represent and change all these laws? Get this. Her Brexit minister, I love it. They've got a minister of Brexit, which is totally funny. David Davis said in a statement that EU law would be transposed into British law on the day Britain formally left the European Union. Laws that were then deemed unnecessary would be repealed by Parliament subsequently. Wait a second. Didn't she just say up here? Hold on, let's back up. It will return power and authority to the elected institutions of our countries. It means the authority of EU law in Britain will end. But it won't, because they're just going to transpose EU law into British law. And then the ones that they don't like, they'll just toss out afterwards. So British law isn't getting their old law statutes put back into power. No. They're going to import EU law, and then they'll decide which pieces they want to keep and get rid of. By a non-elected official who is handed to you by the Queen of England. You know, that figurehead who has no power. Just thought I'd point that out. But we're not done yet. Turkey's parliament met this weekend and extends the mandate to use troops in Iraq and Syria by 1 year. Turkey launched an unprecedented operations inside Syria to back pro-Ankara rebels fighting ISIS militants in the Kurdish militia. Yeah, okay, first of all, let's just point out, they're blowing up the Kurdish militia who are fighting ISIS. So really, who's Turkey backing in this? Who the pro-Ankara rebels? Who are they? Is that the Al-Nusra guys? The ones that they've been funding and you're running arms to, et cetera, et cetera? So Turkey has passed their own laws saying, yeah, we're going to keep our armed forces in Iraq and Syria for another year. Needless to say, come on, darling, load up. Iraq ain't so pleased by this. And that's a past understatement. They have now demanded a parliamentary meeting and have gone to the UN Security Council to say, Turkey has invaded us, and I think you should very well stop, fucking picking your noses and do something about it, because we ain't happy. No, ain't happy at all. Interesting. We're talking about the Middle East, though. A little piece, and I kind of talked about this, would have been 2015, maybe late 2015. I did a little bit of a report on this talking about there's prophecy, right? Because the Christians aren't the only ones who have prophecies, right? The Islamic jihadists, i.e. the Wahhabists, and again, let's not confuse Wahhabists with the Muslims. two radically different things. Wahhabis are technically not Muslims. The Wahhabist jihadists, that's fun to say, are gathering up for the end of the world war, right? So, I mean, okay, this is the express.co.uk. This is like the rag of England's news. It's kind of like the Mirror, right? The end is nigh. U.S. troops fast advancing on ISIS city foretold is a site of the apocalypse. There is a prophecy that has been somehow twisted and turned around to mean that this one very, very small town is, the crazed jihadists are cornered in Dabiq, a Syrian town foretold by Prophet Muhammad is the site of Armageddon. American, Turkish, and rebel forces are now fast approaching the jihadi stronghold, and the bloodthirsty radicals believe the battle will spark the end of the world. That's their interpretation. Remember that. But it's interesting because, bear with me as I move myself over, BBC back in 2014 talked about exactly this. In an article, why the Islamic State chose the town of Dabiq for propaganda, okay, 2014, the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have said, so I want you to understand, believed to have said, and i.e., that means someone's interpretation. Someone has interpreted some scripture in the way to twist this into this story, this jihadist story. The last hour will not come until Muslims vanquish the Romans at Dabiq. Okay, so the Romans are the Americans. Well, and if you really want to get into the whole history, you know, who controls the U.S., the Vatican does, so technically, yeah, they are the Romans, right? So here we have a story from 2014 talking about how they're trying to lead all the U.S. troops, etc., into this one area where they believe prophecy will be fulfilled. Hence, guess what? Now we know that attack is supposedly about to take place. Interesting again, though, that this information comes out this weekend. Now, what else happened? Oh, well, of course, we had HR 3815, U.S. bill, which is the one we're allowing the Saudis, allowing American citizens to sue the Saudis, which we talked about, the veto of the veto of the veto of the veto, et cetera, et cetera. That dog and pony show. And there is one lawsuit that's already been launched against Saudi Arabia. And unfortunately, I forgot and I closed the window. On RT today, it is a wife of a U.S. Navy officer who was killed at the Pentagon on 9/11. Has started a lawsuit against Saudi Arabia. Interesting to see how that plays out, though. Interesting to see how that plays out. And of course, this was also the weekend when they were U.S. is supposed to hand off the internet to the United Nations. I am withholding comment on this topic because I have not had time to really, really heavily get into the research of it. So I'm not, let's just say there's a lot more to this than is being discussed. And from what I've seen, there's a lot of irrational fear porn being pumped out. That is just that, irrational fear porn. So we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. I'm keeping an eye on it. And hopefully in a little while, maybe I'll have enough information to do a report on this in and of itself. We'll see. Now, while everyone is completely and utterly distracted, because, you know, Brangelina, see, I can't even say it with a straight face. Everyone is distracted. Riots in the States, you know, with paid rioters paid by Soros. We've got these two yahoos and the continuous fuckery going on with this whole election and he should, she should, and blah, 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 blah. Isn't it funny how all the attention is going on all these Brangelinas and all this other shit? Nothing much is being talked about what's really going on this weekend, though, is it? I don't know, folks. It's been an interesting weekend. There could be some interesting stuff play out this weekend. All I can say is, we keep our eyes on the ball. Watch as these things play out, and we will see what happens when the markets open tomorrow. And we will see what plays out in the next couple of weeks. I don't expect that Monday morning at 9 o'clock opening bell, we're all of a sudden going to see major things happen. I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that this weekend wasn't a launch point for a lot of interesting things to happen. Things that we may see starting to leak out, play out, maybe over the next 2-3 weeks. Interesting stuff. Anyways, that's it for me. That was our rundown of what happened this weekend. And oh, man, could be an interesting week next week. I'll be back later. Bye, everyone.